Hello and welcome to another fully live Q&A episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Cody Kinsey. I am a security researcher at Varonis, and per usual, we have my good friend and fellow hacker Alex on to help answer your hacking-related Q&A questions. So if you've got questions, make sure that you are dropping them in the chat, and also hello to everybody who's already there today. Wow, as soon as we went live, there are already like 30 people in the chat, so hello everyone, and yeah,
Hello.
if you've got a good question, make sure to either leave it in the chat live and we will answer it on the show, or if you are watching this on repeat, make sure to leave it on the video and we will go back and answer it on the next stream on Wednesday. So hello everyone, we have been super busy this week, and yeah, so let's touch base a little bit about what we have been working on. Alex, what about you?
Well, first, to answer the first question we have here, am I too late? No, you're perfectly on
No,
time.
you're perfectly on time.
Oh my gosh, a lot of stuff. So we're preparing for hopefully a launch in the next few days, at least on Hack 5, featuring the latest edition of the Rubber Nugget. So we've been working on pulling a bunch of assets, designing different documentation sites and as well as also rolling a more finalized version of the Rubber Nugget that's a little more refined. So I've been working on polishing the web interface a little bit. I don't know if I have any screenshots of it somewhere. Yeah, so I've been working on refining the web interface for the Rubber Nugget. So we added a few more features like the ability to create payloads from a web browser, as well as also being able to delete them. So an issue with the old version of the Rubber Nugget that we got some feedback on was in order to use it, you had to plug it into your computer in order to upload payloads and create them. But now you can do that fully from a web browser. So hopefully that's a little bit easier to use. In addition, we also published a new case design, so it's a little more rugged and Nugget intact.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also I've been working on an SMD version of the Nugget. If we can switch over to my screen. Looks like we're having...
Oh yeah, perhaps our audio is a little bit
There's a
quiet
whole
at the
lot
moment,
going
but we'll
on.
probably
Yeah.
pick it up again.
It should be good now.
Cool.
Cool. Okay, so I've also been working on an SMD version of the Wi-Fi Nugget, so this will hopefully be the next sort of base model for the Nugget. It's small, it's compact, it's extremely thin, and volumetrically about the quarter of the size of the current Nugget. Of course, featuring the same chipset, which is the ESP32S2, and also some other nice features like breakout headers, the ability to interface over UART, I2C, and also the ability to debug. So we have a lot going on in the works right now. And I know you've been working on a lot of the documentation and also just
So
making
much of it.
sure our project is documented. So how's that been for you?
Pretty good, pretty good. So first off, if you saw the SMD Nugget and you're like, wow, I want that, we're still in the process of creating the very first prototype. So if you have something that you are just dying for to be added here, again, like we've got, what are the peripherals that are connected now?
Oh gosh. I don't know if we're still on my screen, but
yeah,
so
I2C
we have a
connectors.
quick connector, which is
Cool.
basically I2C. It's a JST port. We have UART. So this is useful for serial debugging, or if you want to connect, like a GPS module or any other device that operates over serial. And then we also have a NeoPixel expansion. So on the front side here, you can see we have the standard NeoPixel that comes on all of our Wi-Fi Nuggets. You also have a breakout here, so if you wanted to add like a NeoPixel strip, like I think you can see the NeoPickles.
The NeoPickles behind us, yes.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nick.
I think you can see the NeoPixels behind us. You can basically drive those, using the same interface that we have on the Wi-Fi Nugget. You can just plug it in, and it works completely inline over a one-wire interface, which is real cool. USB,
GPS, like lots of cool stuff you could do. So if you have a feature that you're like dying for on here, then let us know. There's still time for us to prototype this and come up with different versions. Obviously, there's no like power input on this one, so we decided that this should still be like a little plug-in device because it's for USB attacks. There's not really much point in wasting a ton of space for like powering it when the point is it gets plugged into a computer anyway. But yeah, so that's what's going on hardware-wise. And again, if you're in the audience, if you have some suggestions for a killer feature you really want the hardware to be able to connect to, then do let us know. So if we switch over to my screen, you can see what I was up to until like 6 in the morning last night. So writing documentation for the Wi-Fi Nugget. And this is the web interface that Alex was talking about. Right now, if you connect to the new version of the Rubber Nugget binary via Wi-Fi, then it offers up this handy web interface, which I think is really cool. And this is the exported PDF version, so the actual website looks a lot nicer. But yeah, writing up this documentation for the Rubber Nugget was, let's say, a lot of fun. And it reminded me of the days back at Null Byte where I would spend hours and hours and hours until early in the morning writing up software documentation. But yeah, so we're planning on releasing this on Monday, which is exciting. We were possibly considering maybe doing it today, but it seems like we're rushing a little bit if we wanted to make sure everybody gets the word out and knows that we are now offering up this really cool tool. So yeah, if you have any questions about what we've been up to with the Wi-Fi Nugget, I've also been on a kick making custom cases, just because I feel like it. I don't know why. So I decided that I really wanted one that had like one of those little like places for like cell phone candy / like a lanyard, and that also I wanted to put keys on it. So I decided to do that. If you're interested in making custom case designs, everything is up on GitHub, and it is very easy for you to take the case design, modify it, and print your own if you have access to a 3D printer.
Nice. This looks more like a Cat 09 than a Wi-Fi Nugget.
What? Yeah, I guess. I got a bunch of like cat themed beads to make into a little like cell phone charm on here just to make it cute for one of our videos. To look at like a really customized version of the Nugget that someone's been like using and kind of like putting their own spin on.
It's also a dangerous weapon that caught me in the eye the other day.
Oh yeah,
I was swinging it around.
I did. I also threw it, and yeah, it really kind of flails. Yeah, and please, I know that people say that like if you show your key online, people can copy it. Please don't copy my keys. I appreciate that. I am taking a risk showing them. So then also, I made a payload for the Wi-Fi Nugget that allows you to screen share in just a couple seconds. So one of the things that's cool about the Nugget is it has Wi-Fi, meaning you can connect to it and then run commands like one by one if you want to. So what I wanted to do was make a fully interactive session where I can see the screen and then I can control the Nugget and run one command after the other and see the result on the screen. And here is that running. So if you want to try it out, this is a Ducky script payload, so it should work on other devices. The only gotcha is that unless you have a Wi-Fi Nugget, then you wouldn't be able to also like run commands one by one. I guess actually if you had like an OMG device, this might work too. But yeah, the Wi-Fi is also something that I focused on when writing my Python script.
Hey.
Hooray, do you see it? Oh, I have to enlarge it because it's a bit, there we go. So this is my entire script to send commands to the Wi-Fi Nugget. If you connect to its web interface, then Alex here wrote a nice little web API that allows me to just send a request and basically send whatever Ducky script command I want. So I tested this out. It works. It's 6 lines, so that was really cool. Yeah, so this is, it's been a lot of fun getting this tool to do as much as we possibly can get it to do in a relatively short period of time. So if you've got any questions that are Wi-Fi Nugget related, feel free to ask them because yeah, that's what we've been up to all week. So that is the research we have been working on mostly this week. Let's go ahead and start taking some questions. Alex, did you have any questions from the previous videos? Just so we you know, if we tell people to leave it on the video from the week before and then we never look, that's not very nice. So
yeah, I can actually go ahead and take a look at that right now.
All right.
Oh boy. Okay, so another thing that I've actually been researching is using the Wi-Fi Pineapple. That's something I really haven't dived into a whole lot, but I put out this video last week on using PineAP. Oh gosh, there's my face. Are we on my screen? Yeah. Okay, so yeah, that's always jarring. I put out a video on how to use the PineAP module for gathering reconnaissance on networks devices I've connected to before and how to spoof them using something called a karma attack. So if you want to check out how you can do that on the Pineapple, if you have one, or if you're just interested in learning about what this is, you can check out my video. But I think we got a few questions here. Some of them are a little bit interesting. Okay, so here's the first one. You have a boyfriend? Question mark. Wow, intelligent man. How are you?
Let's just answer the last part of that question, huh?
How am I? I could be better, but yeah, I'm doing okay. How about you?
All right, great question.
Cool.
Thanks so much for that question. I also see more of a statement. This video is good to learn hacking. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it
that's
is.
what we try to do.
All right.
Okay,
so
I'm actually not seeing a lot of questions on this one, so I might actually take a question.
Could this be possible for the Raspberry Pi 4?
Yeah, there are frameworks for doing stuff like this on Linux. I'm forgetting the exact tool, but you can do karma attacks using... gosh, what is it? Do you happen to know what it is?
You can do this big manual. So, you know, if you're on a Linux system and you want to just put out fake access point names, then it's fairly easy to use a number of different tools to...
You could probably use like the error crack suite, maybe. I know you can see probe requests and you can log them. You could probably use that to also spoof fake networks. I'm not sure.
Yeah. What's interesting is, now that I think back on it, most of the time when I want to create a bunch of fake networks, I actually use a microcontroller, just because it gives you low-level access and you can send out a bunch of custom Wi-Fi frames. And that makes it really easy to dump a bunch of fake Wi-Fi networks out there and perform a karma attack. There are some tools for doing it on Linux, but they have restrictions for how many fake network names you can create, whereas with the microcontroller you can create up to like a couple hundred, which I thought was really cool. I imagine AirCrackNG would probably have something in that tool set, though. Yeah. I'm actually a little embarrassed that I don't know that, because I was the one that did a lot of the research on like beacon swarms and like karma attacks. So like all of that work that I did was almost exclusively using microcontrollers to create the fake networks. So yeah, it seems like the PineAPP might be one of the better like pre-made solutions to do that. But if you know of any, I'm actually gonna have to research this now because I'm a little embarrassed. But if you know of any, please drop them in the chat and maybe I will remember.
I'm slipping on the name. It's like right on the slip of my tongue, but there's, it's basically a Raspberry Pineapple, if you could put it that way, but it hosts like a web interface that does basically.
You're not talking about the Wi-Fi
thing.
Pumpkin, right?
No.
Okay, cool.
That's a framework for like evil twin type stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this one is like almost sort of a Pineapple, but like a budget store edition. So there's that.
Someone asked, my neighbor hacked my network with this. What can I do against it? Can I counterattack?
Oh, hey.
So first off, we have to ask the question, like, so a karma attack is when you trick like a device into joining your malicious network. So for your neighbor to hack your network, I guess they might have like maybe used it to like phish your password or get like I'm actually not totally sure how that. Alex, maybe you should take this question.
Yeah, so presuming that you're just talking about the fact that you were duped into connecting to this network unknowingly, there are tools that are able to detect this, since frameworks or devices like the Wi-Fi Pineapple will basically emulate all of these networks just using the same MAC address or something that's easily able to be identified. So if we switch over to my screen, we have a tool here that I was checking out the other day called PiSavar, I guess. But this can basically detect activity from the PineAP module by looking for stuff that's indicative of a karma attack going on. So for example, a bunch of different SSID names that are being broadcasted from the same source MAC address might indicate that this is something that's trying to spoof a malicious network. And also it can confirm this by also looking at probe requests that are coming out from nearby devices and seeing if they're being beaconed at the same time from one of these devices like a Pineapple. So I found this really interesting. The dependency for this is the AirCrack suite. So actually, if it detects that there's a Wi-Fi Pineapple nearby or someone else that's trying to maybe run a karma attack, this can actually automatically deauthenticate those devices. So if your cell phone or any of your other Wi-Fi devices are trying to, automatically join what could possibly be a rogue access point, using a tool like this can actually just disconnect you from that network in order to prevent that from happening. So there are ways to mitigate this. I'd say the most simple is probably just don't trust open networks, or like turn off the option to automatically connect to them on your phone.
Yeah, having a bunch of open networks stored on your device, whether it's your cell phone or your laptop, means that you are vulnerable to this sort of attack, because it will automatically connect to these networks that it's openly broadcasting, saying that it's looking for. So it is a really big risk. And what's funny is a bunch of people were talking trash about the karma attack in this video. They're like, "What is it? 2014? Get out of here!" Like, no. And I was like, this still works.
Yeah,
oh yeah,
pretty relevant. Karma?
Are you still in 2014? Lol, says the person who has never once used an open Wi-Fi network. Yeah, so a lot of people were a little dismissive about this attack, but I challenge you, go into your devices and take a look to see if there's any open networks in there. If there are, maybe you shouldn't be laughing, because this attack definitely still works. And I see, again, my favorite example of this attack is to go to a crowded concert or something, turn on your phone's hotspot, and make it a really common open Wi-Fi network name. Like in the United States, Google Starbucks is a very easy one to do. And boom, I had as many as 12, 13, 14 phones all connecting to my phone, thinking that it was, that they were suddenly at Starbucks and that was the strongest, freest internet connection to use. And then I can just turn on my VPN, send it to another country, and suddenly all of their phones are loading in Japanese. So like, if you don't think the karma attack works, go ahead and try that. It's a pretty low-level thing to just offer free internet to people, and if they happen to use it and then their websites load in another language, then, well, that's the price of free internet sometimes. So again, this is how I can demonstrate that, yes, this attack definitely still works. So it's definitely worth circling back and asking the question if some of these attacks from years ago do still work. But in this case, yeah, they totally do. And that's something that if you're storing these networks in your phone, you should definitely be aware of.
Yeah,
Sweet.
In my case, it was as simple as just deauthenticating my phone from the network it was connected to, and then just putting up a whole bunch of open networks like Starbucks Wi-Fi and a few other really common ones, and it automatically connected.
Yeah, and it doesn't tell you most of the time when it switches seamlessly between different networks. So if you just have a little internet interruption and suddenly, boom, like you're on, Google Starbucks, yet there's not a Starbucks for miles away, then that means that somebody's probably switched your device over to a malicious network with a karma attack, possibly using Wi-Fi PineAP.
Someone asks, best use case for a Wi-Fi Nugget. One of the more interesting ones I saw this week, coming from one of our customers who made a discussion on GitHub. They've been using it for automating different Windows tasks, since the Nugget has the ability to deploy like up to 36 different payloads, which you can store in different folders and stuff like that. It makes it really easy to not only identify, but I guess like sort your scripts and visually see what's going on thanks to the Nugget interface. So I thought that was a cool use case, just being able to automate stuff, which was also like the original idea behind some of the driving like Hack5 devices like the Rubber Ducky and the Bash Bunny. They were designed with automation in mind.
Yeah, I would say the best use case for me, or one of the coolest, I think, is the one I've been focusing on, which is like a full interactive session using the Rubber Nugget to essentially like create a screen sharing session and then let you just push commands to it live. Because often you don't know what kind of computer you're going to come up against if you're doing a pen test, and you don't know if they have a Windows computer, a Linux computer, a Mac OS computer. Having the Nugget and allowing yourself to just pick in the opening, like beginning of an attack, whether you're going to go and do a remote screen session or if you're going to get a backdoor is really cool. And the ability to see where your payload is executing on the screen means that you know exactly what's going on and whether it's working or not. So you won't just be pressing buttons and hoping that something's firing off. You can literally see the commands that you are running fire on the screen as they go. So if you were someone who wants to get a remote session and you want to do it really, really quickly, the barrier to entry for getting a screen sharing session set up is much lower than full interactivity. So I really like the fact that you can get a remote session, you can see what's going on the screen live, and then you can send commands to the Nugget live as well. That all I think is like super cool, and I'm not sure that there's many other Hack5 devices that can do that.
Yeah, one feature that I did want to implement maybe in the near future is complete live control. So for example, like being able to move the mouse and also register keystrokes on the spot and be able to send them over a Wi-Fi connection.
Yeah.
Which when paired with something like the screen sharing demo you were showing us earlier would basically give you full control.
Definitely, yeah. It would be like you were sitting right behind the computer.
Yeah.
All right, so one question from your video actually. Phones change their MAC address now to avoid being tracked, usually every time they connect to a Wi-Fi network. And that's true. Windows computers have been doing this for a long time, but now a lot of iOS devices and Android devices will create a new unique MAC address for every different Wi-Fi network that they join. And while they will use that MAC address every time they join that particular network, they use a different MAC address for every network they join. So if you were trying to track someone as they go about their day, it would be a lot harder because their phone isn't just shouting out the same identifiable number all the time. So that part of this question is true. I am making an anti-stalking suite that uses a beacon swarm, very dear to my heart, to get cell phone MAC addresses along with other traffic like correlating Bluetooth traffic. Any ideas on how to get a unique identifier from Wi-Fi traffic? So our friend here, Weird Science TV, is attempting to do basically wireless surveillance.
Almost war driving.
Almost, well, yeah, kind of, sort of. Like, this is more like profiling of individual devices. So I've also worked on something like this where if you wanted to try to figure out if a device that is trying to defend itself as best as possible from analysis is nearby consistently, like how can you actually spot that? Well, some of the best research I've seen on this is by Matthew Van Hoff, which is not surprising because I quote him all the time. But in this case, not only are there ways that you can spot patterns in the random MAC addresses that it's creating as it goes about its day, you can also look at things like information elements and optional elements inside the packets that are being sent. So I did not know this when I started out with Wi-Fi, but Wi-Fi is not one monolithic thing. It is a suggestion, and manufacturers will adhere to that suggestion as best they choose to. Often, they have to have certain features built in order for it to be called Wi-Fi, but they play it really fast and loose with some of the optional parts of the standard, meaning that your cell phone versus your laptop versus like an IoT device will put out packets that are a slightly different flavor than other packets around it. And that means that it's going to add optional information elements that are just for that vendor or manufacturer. It's going to add maybe it's going to format its packets in a specific way that that vendor decided to. And that's because of the underlying chipset that that device has, which acts as a little fingerprint. So you start getting enough of these fingerprints where, all right, you have the software running on it that might add an information element to the packet. You have the hardware, which might format the packet in a certain way. And after a while, enough of these things, including, for example, the timing. The timing is a specific characteristic of the chip that's kind of behind the Wi-Fi of the device. So if you have timing, if you have information elements, if you have optional elements that are all unique, you can actually build something that will fingerprint these devices, even though they're changing their MAC address so frequently, because frankly, it's the way that their packets smell that makes it kind of stand out and unique. So honestly, this is a good problem for like machine learning or other things that can be fed a bunch of information and kind of learn about the relationship between them, because often it's not the contents of the packets that could correlate a device that's following you maybe. It would just be the way that those packets, again, smell to like a machine learning program and how they have specific characteristics in the way that they're formatted or in the way that they include elements. So super, super interesting, the cat and mouse game between people that are trying to de-anonymize wireless devices and manufacturers that are trying to create a standard that allows a little bit more protection. It's been a major victory for people trying to remain anonymous, to have their devices constantly changing now, because back in the day, grocery stores and department stores would track everything you do and then share the information amongst themselves, to the point that you can't turn on Bluetooth now for an app without enabling permission sharing, because that was abused so badly by people trying to track you everywhere you go. So yeah, very, very interesting question. Touched on a interesting debate between privacy and people who just want to track every cell phone. So good question.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting news out there on different ways stuff can be profiled. A scary thing that I read this week, just kind of random, was the ability to use the internal gyroscope on like cell phones in order to determine what people are like listening to. So your phone can basically detect with full permission what sort of ads you're listening to, like on TV, or what sort of stuff you're watching and conversations you're having without even having to ask for that permission, since the internal gyroscope and accelerometer usually isn't something you have to enable permissions for on applications. So it's interesting to see that you can probably do the same thing with Wi-Fi. And I'm wondering if there are tools out there like the Ponagochi that I know use artificial intelligence in order to profile stuff and learn about Wi-Fi networks it encounters. And it'd be pretty interesting to see if there's tools that are able to do that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel like if you try to do this sort of thing manually, it can be very difficult. But once you know that there are differences between like the fundamental structure and type of packet, it becomes a lot easier to start sniffing those differences out.
Yeah.
All right, so one question. Hey, Cody, do you plan on doing any updated Null Byte videos on some of the programs you've used before, like Wireshark, Phone and Foga, BlackEye, and such? Because nearly all of them have changed. Yes, actually, it's pretty crazy. Well, okay, so my response isn't yes. I'm acknowledging that yes, a lot of people ask about this because I've gotten a lot of, I get a lot of questions sent directly to my Twitter where people are like, hey, this program has been taken down. Can you just send me a binary? I'm like, what? And then I go and look, and yeah, like there was I think it was, for example, the Linux choice had a lot of different tools that I ended up covering, and then they got very upset at some point and just took down all of their software. So it's no longer available. You can't find it anymore. So people be like, hey, do you have a copy of this on your computer? And I'd be like, yeah. So there was a short period of time where I'd be like, yeah, here you go, here's my copy. But after a while, I decided to kind of like phase that out. So yeah, there are a lot of different programs that have changed a lot since I covered them years ago on Null Byte. Will I be doing it on Null Byte? No. The company that owns Null Byte is going through some problems and has been trying to sell it for quite some time, and has also stopped purchasing content from us a long time ago. So unfortunately, I don't know who is going to end up owning Null Byte, and I won't be able to post any videos until all the dust settles on that, and then whoever ends up owning it talks to me, because it's not going to be me, because they're asking for a lot. But yeah, I think that it is worth it to cover some of these things again, like Wireshark basics or Nmap basics, or some of the other things that have had lots of stuff added to them or maybe don't work so well anymore. But we would need to do it on Hack 5. So if that's something you want to see, then definitely. But yeah, not on Null Byte, because that's been done for years now.
Nice. Yeah, we have been getting a lot of requests to cover some of the tools that we show in a little bit more detail, like the Wireshark video, and some of the other tools like Nmap or the more popular Linux utilities. So if you guys want to see that, let us know and we'll probably take a crack at it. Someone also asks, I'm working on the war driving rig with a D1 Mini and Wi-Fi thingy. Ah, yes, the Wi-Fi thingy.
Ah,
my
yes,
favorite.
the Wi-Fi thingy. Love
Didn't
it.
realize I need an Adafruit LED thingy. That's one I haven't heard of. I don't know if you're referring to the NeoPixel or not, but it's not required for the rig. You can get by with just an SD card logger, an ESP8266, and a GPS module.
I like this question. I have a local business that has been doing random deauthentication attacks against my Wi-Fi network. What can I do about it? So a deauthentication attack is sending a signal that says, hey, disconnect from this network. And it can either be the sign of a malicious attack or, and I suspect that if this is a business, this might be the cause, unless it's just like a small business that's gone totally rogue. It can be a result of malfunctioning network equipment. So you wouldn't believe how many times I've read stories of people being like, I'm under attack, someone's attacking me, there's hackers breaking in, and then it's a misconfigured like router or like endpoint device that is thinking that there's something that needs to be kicked off of its network, and it's accidentally kicking people off of other networks instead. That is not always the case, so it very well could be that you're under attack, but you would not believe how many times there's a misconfigured device that is accidentally sending out deauthentication packets at a business that somebody needs to go in and wrangle to get it to stop doing that. So if you can absolutely prove that the deauthentication packets are coming from this business, then maybe it's a mistake, because a lot of the time that has been the case and just reaching out has been able to resolve it. But if it is somebody who is doing it illegally, then that is actually a crime. And of course, you can either report it if you have evidence of such, or you can upgrade to a standard that is resistant against this sort of attack. So protected management frames have been out for a long time, and they will prevent this sort of attack from happening because they require authentication, and they cannot be spoofed the way that standard deauthentication packets can. So enabling this or upgrading to WPA3 should both take care of this problem. Of course, if someone's attacking you with deauthentication packets and it's malicious, then you should also probably let someone know about that. Again, provided you have evidence, you can pick it up on Wireshark and you know that it is in fact coming from this business. Just keep in mind that these can be spoofed. So if I wanted to frame someone, it's very easy to craft a packet that says it's from a certain device where it might not actually be. So there's a third possibility that someone might actually legitimately be attacking you, but they might be spoofing the packets to make it look like it's coming from a different device. So keep that in mind. There's a lot of spoofing that can go on with Wi-Fi that makes it difficult to know exactly where it's coming from, unless you can do something like a fox hunt where you can see exactly where the signal strength itself is coming from. And that's pretty open and shut.
Yeah, it's kind of pertinent to the Wireshark video we did on tracking down Wi-Fi devices. But yeah, that is one of the things to deauthentication attacks, because typically these are going to be packets that are sent out like from your router to devices that are connected to that network. Like if they're out of range or something and it needs to kick them off the network. So in order to send out these packets, typically the attacker will have to spoof the MAC address of the router that that device is connected to. So it's pretty dang hard to track down what device is actually emulating these packets, unless you're able to pinpoint like the physical location by tracking down the signal strength, which sucks.
We also have greetings from both England and Brazil. Hello. Hello, everyone.
Hey.
So one question was about whether or not they can see files and pictures and other things that are going over their network. I guess we'll see. I don't know if I like that question, but let's answer it, and then we can untangle why you would want to do that
It's a loaded
in a
question.
second. Yeah, so if you have a Wi-Fi network, it's your Wi-Fi network, you operate it, and you want to see what kind of traffic is going across it. There are some problems here. If, for example, there are other people on the network and you don't have consent to go through their private stuff, then they could probably get pretty upset about this. And unless you're explicitly clear that that is what you're trying to do, you could get in trouble for intercepting what is supposed to be private communication. So just be aware that this is a slippery slope. You know, if you have your network, it's just your network, and someone breaks in and you want to see what they're doing, that is allowed. If you're sharing a network with another person and you're trying to use this as a method of surveillance, then you could be committing a crime, even if you operate the network. So just be aware of that. Now, back to the question, there are a couple of different ways to do this. Probably the most obvious way of doing this would be Wireshark. If you're able to intercept packets, you're able to hear the start of the conversation. So you either kick them off briefly or you're there when they initiate the conversation with the network. And they are using a service that doesn't support SSL. Those three things would need to be in place in order for you to see what's going over a network. But If that was the case, then yes, you would be able to just decode packets in Wireshark. And I've done this for like a cheap security camera, and we can actually see the images that are being transmitted over the network. So another thing you can do is have like a device like pfSense or something that's actually like scanning and trying to find which websites are being loaded. But again, if those websites are using SSL, we would just be looking at like DNS traffic to figure out what's going on, and we wouldn't actually be able to peek into the contents of the packets unless we were doing like a full man-in-the-middle attack and we were like downgrading SSL and doing a bunch of other stuff. So yeah, I mean, if you wanted to be crazy and just downgrade all your SSL to everything and then be able and just like, try to spy as much as possible, it sounds like kind of a lot of work. Because Wi-Fi is designed to be protected against this sort of snooping attack, and that's why we have SSL. What does SSL stand for?
Secure socket layer.
Oh, socket layer.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was getting it
call back
confused
to our
with
April Fool's episode.
Yeah,
where,
our two-factor authentication with secure socket layer. Totally different.
Go back and watch that if you haven't seen it. It's
that
pretty
was
interesting.
that was a great.
Someone asks, C++ or Go in pen testing? We've been seeing Go used a lot for deploying malware now, just because so it's also an interpreted language, which is great. It's a little more portable, it's easier to work with, it's cross-platform. And the great thing about it is you can also compile binaries that build in all the dependencies and libraries with it, so it's a whole lot more portable when you're trying to, I guess I'm taking this from the attacker perspective, but it's a lot more portable when you're trying to interact with different operating systems, because you can also build it out for Linux, Mac, Windows, etc. And you can also include the dependencies and libraries with it, so that way it doesn't have to reference any external code. So I think it's definitely more versatile, and we're seeing a lot more use cases for it. And also typically, most of the other pieces of malware that are out there, they're able to be detected more easily from things like VirusTotal or maybe other types of antivirus, just because there's so many different variations and strains and spin-offs of existing pieces of code. But for languages like Go, there aren't a lot of that out there. There aren't a lot of malware or other things that have been analyzed quite yet. So it definitely makes a case for using Go.
Yeah, and as for us working with microcontrollers, we use almost exclusively like C++ with that, although also CircuitPython. So most of the C++ that I use is going into working with microcontrollers, which obviously is a super interesting field, and that's why we have the Wi-Fi Nugget.
Yeah, that being said, we do most of our development with C. Just because it's compiled, it's very low level, and just kind of across the board, you can use a lot of common libraries that also work, like, for example, on Linux that I've developed with. Like, one of the ones that we're using for the FAT file system, for instance, is FATFS, which is just FAT file system. That was a component that I used in C when actually developing a Linux application. But when I found out that you could just go ahead and port that over to the ESP, I found it very useful for integrating some of the USB features that we're working with on the Nugget.
One sort of question is, I remember a white paper on using Wi-Fi routers passively for detecting people in the room. Have you heard anything more about that? So not only would this totally work, but you don't need a whole router to do that. One of the cool things about the new ESP32S2 that we use in the Rubber Nugget, which I actually have not tested yet, is the time of flight sensor. So what this is supposed to do is if you have a couple of ESPs, or I guess 3 ESPs, so you can do trilateralization, you can determine the pretty approximate location of a Wi-Fi device. In fact, Alex, I think you have way more experience than I do with determining this by wireless signals.
Yeah, I had to do this ridiculous project. Rather, oh god. Okay, so the scenario was this guy who had like a gas station or something wanted me to make this device, or rather this cluster of devices where it can pinpoint the exact location of like cars that pulled up to like fuel or something. I don't even know what it was used for, but I had to design this whole system. Using just ESP8266s to identify when a device like a truck came up, or like, basically any Wi-Fi device. It would be able to like triangulate the presence of this car and determine what gas station pump it pulled up to. But yeah, I was able to do that using just GPS and an ESP8266 module, or rather 3 of them, so we could trilaterate the location. It was kind of ridiculous, but yeah, the cool thing about the ESP32S2 is it does have the built-in time of flight thing, so in theory it should be easier to pinpoint that without having to rely on something like GPS.
All right, got any more questions? One is just, Does Hack5 do corporate consulting? If our regular content doesn't scare your people enough, then probably you could probably talk to Darren and see if some of us could go and scare your people, unsettle them, make them turn off their Wi-Fi. Another question was, if you're worried about privacy and tracking, then is it worth it to use Bluetooth? Why use Bluetooth at all? So sometimes, a lot of devices will do everything they can to treat Wi-Fi and Bluetooth like it's something that could potentially be tracked and randomize it as much as possible. So there is some built-in protection just in the standard that Android phones, for example, will use, where it'll try to randomize its MAC address as much as possible on the Bluetooth end as well. That doesn't really work if you have a pair of headphones that don't change their MAC address. And that also doesn't work if you have a tracker or any other smart accessory that has Bluetooth. I think this is also funny because police body cameras do not change their Bluetooth MAC address. They've got Bluetooth, it's on, and it's just out there all the time, unchanging. And so all these Bluetooth accessories do actually provide a pretty good attack surface for tracking. So while your phone might actually be doing everything it can to hide itself via Bluetooth, your headphones might not be. So there's a lot, and neither might your car stereo. So there's a lot of different ways where it's possible someone might be able to track you via Bluetooth. It's just convenience versus security. If you don't want to use headphones anymore because you can't find headphones that have Wi-Fi or Bluetooth security built into them, then that might be a trade-off that you just need to make if you're worried about that particular protocol.
Yeah, just going back for a second to the person that asked about Wi-Fi routers passively detecting people in the room. We actually did a video on how you can do that, like with the Wi-Fi Nugget, using a piece of software we wrote called the friend detector. So basically, it can just detect the presence of known devices based off their MAC addresses by sniffing them through things like probe requests or other types of packets they're emitting, and basically just grabbing the MAC address from the metadata. Of course, you have to take into consideration things we talked about, like MAC randomization. That does play a part in your ability to detect these devices, but it's very possible to do this from low-cost microcontrollers like the ESP32S2.
So there was a question about the Signal Owl, which is not sold anymore. I don't know why, but Alex is the only one I know who has worked with it. Alex,
oh, cool.
What do you think of the Signal Owl?
What was the question? I think it was actually pretty cool. It's got a Wi-Fi chip baked into it, so you can use it for reconnaissance. There's a pass-through port, so if you just wanted to hook up like USB or something to your computer while also using it, it just looks like a pretty discrete, what do you call it? USB expander thing. And then also there's like another USB port that you can use for tethering on GPS, which you can use for war driving. It actually has the AirCrack suite built in, and I believe Airmon NG allows you to add on the ability to interface with a GPS device. So I didn't get to test that quite yet, but in theory you should be able to use that for war driving or basically anything else. It's got a mini Linux computer and also Wi-Fi chip baked in, so there's a whole lot you can do with it.
Very rare now. Yeah, so trade them amongst yourselves. One question, do you ever do any blue team based content? This is something you were talking about. You wanted to do the pineapple detection one.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I guess that could be considered blue teaming. Yeah, so blue teaming is basically taking the side of people that are trying to sniff out attackers while also sort of using their techniques, or at least being able to understand what techniques attackers are using in order to identify their presence. So in my case, what I would be doing like with I forget what the heck that GitHub repository is called now, but with that tool I was talking about earlier that could detect Wi-Fi pineapples, that would be an example of blue teaming, being able to detect someone that's trying to do something malicious to your corporate network or something like that. If someone hid a Wi-Fi pineapple in your backpack or something and was trying to hack you. Yeah.
Ooh, I really like this this question followed by a statement. Why are there so many stickers on your laptop followed by GigaChad stickers? They're cheaper this way, the computers.
It also makes your laptop faster.
Yeah, it speeds it up. Thank you for the question. All right, what's next?
We actually have a question on our GitHub. Someone asks, the Wi-Fi rubber Nugget Invader, which is just a concoction of letters and words and basically every Wi-Fi Nugget software we've made. Okay, so yeah, they ask, my idea would be to connect the new rubber Nugget software with the Invader and see if it's possible to basically do all of this on the ESP32S2 and have the ability to have a small menu where you can toggle between Wi-Fi attacks and USB attacks. Is this possible? Not at the moment. The problem...
That's not true.
Sort of. Well, I mean,
Sort
not
of.
on our platform.
Yeah, not on our platform. Although it used to not be true, but now it looks like there actually is a way to do deauthentication attacks on the ESP32S2. However, it is not easy, and we have not got it working personally. So the problem here is that the ESP32S2 comes from a time after Espressif, the manufacturer, decided to maybe make their product a little less controversial by preventing some of the worst types of attacks you could do with it by making it so you can't write arbitrary packets. Now, they allowed this in the early version of the ESP8266, which is why so many people like to use the ESP8266 for Wi-Fi hacking stuff. However, the ESP32 and the ESP32S2 have this deliberately blocked inside the instruction set. So seems like you can't use it, but someone actually went through, reverse engineered this, and was able to find the name of the function that was basically providing the blocking functionality. So by redefining this at compile time, they were actually able to make a function with the same name that was just empty. So anytime it attempts to call this function and block, instead there's nothing there. And this seems to allow the ability to write arbitrary packets again, which is really cool. So again, I have not tested this out yet, but I've seen there's a write-up on Hackaday about it, and there's also a couple GitHub proof of concepts, all of them for the ESP32, not for the ESP32S2 yet, which is why I haven't messed around with it. But it does look like in the future, again, not the near future, but the future, it might actually be possible to do this. And we've said no for a really long time, but just going through this research in the last couple of weeks, it seems as though there is technically a way of doing this, even though it is kind of a pain. All right, next question.
We have more questions about Null Byte. Woohoo! Yeah, just go back like 30 minutes and you'll see.
Are you using Discord? Is there a community there? So I do not personally use Discord, although I am considering changing my stance in light of the fact that I've been contributing code to the CircuitPython libraries, and like they're really, really nice. I've been told many times that they have a great Discord community. So I might get back on Discord, but I used to use Discord for managing like students' organizations, and I also used it for a lot of other stuff, and I frankly have yet to find a Discord community I think is going great. And because of that, I don't advocate for the blind creation of them unless there's like a plan and like people in place to make it a success. So I've been asked many times about creating a Discord community. I'm not super opposed to the idea. It's just the moderation, the energy that has to go into it, and then also making sure it doesn't fail takes so much work. So I haven't been able to find the energy in myself personally to do that, and frankly, I've found a lot of Discord communities to be sad places.
Someone says, is it possible to capture a handshake, any 1, 2, 3, or 4-way packets using an ESP8266? I have 2, so that is the question. Unfortunately, not on the ESP8266, because the problem with that is it just truncates packets. Mm-hmm. So you're only able to sniff for the metadata of these packets, so you can see the types of Wi-Fi frames that are being exchanged, but not the whole packet itself. So you can't see the data that's encrypted between devices that are exchanging data. You also can't sniff the full handshake. But in the proof of concept that Cody was just talking about, which we'll find the GitHub link for somewhere sometime and maybe demo it. There was a proof of concept that shows how you can capture a handshake using the ESP32, using the reversed engineered Espressif IDF. So you can do that on the ESP32 and presumably the newer S series and C series.
And then also, James, I think, was mentioning that he uses ESP Presence or something like that to, ESP Presence on the ESP32 to detect people in his home for automation. So a lot of these things are actually used for IoT applications, and it's not, for figuring out the exact presence of a device to spy on them. It's to make sure that like your light turns on when you go into the correct room, for example. So yeah, this is actually a pretty cool way that you can do automation in a smart home, but also a way that you can do surveillance as well.
Hey, Julian says, hello, Cody and Alex. Hope you've been well. I'm happy to say I managed to pass my first comp sci course and pulled an 82% final mark.
Congratulations,
That's
you
awesome.
friggin' nerd. You're a lot better at math than I am.
Nice.
Jeez.
Also, we recognize you, so thanks for tuning into the stream.
Yeah, no, that makes me really happy. Is learning PowerShell worth it at all to make yourself more employable in cybersecurity, generally speaking, or is knowing Python and Linux enough? That's such a good question.
If you're doing Windows administration.
Yeah, if you're doing Windows stuff, and tons of stuff runs on Windows, so like that would make you much more marketable for being able to. For me, like Bash and PowerShell are kind of like the same set of skills when it comes to making yourself employable. The same things that you can do in Bash, you can do in PowerShell. Generally, it's just the language is different and longer. So if you're interested in doing automation, scripting, that sort of thing, then yeah, learning Linux systems, learning Bash, and then learning PowerShell will make you very, very versatile when it comes to the types of systems you can do scripting on. And frankly, like there's so many built-in tools that already do most of what you're going to want to do. Learning how to string them together with a PowerShell script or a Bash script is going to make you look a lot smarter than you are, which is great. In fact, my friends and I used to go to our computer science challenges where they would give us a challenge and you were supposed to use like C++ to try to solve it. And we would always solve it in like a 2-line Bash script and make all the computer science students feel bad.
Nice.
So Bash scripting, PowerShell, super cool, super useful, and can make it so you can do things that would normally take a lot of computer science. So I would say, yeah, if you have the opportunity to learn PowerShell, it's not that hard. And frankly, there's a ton of stuff you can do with it. It just does require a bit of knowledge about the way that Windows is set up and the way that it works behind the scenes in order to be useful. So keep that in mind. Because I realized, like, yeah, I'll be good at PowerShell, and I'm like, I am not a Windows administrator. I don't know what these commands mean. Like, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, and I don't know what to switch in order to do something good or bad. So that was, for me, a little bit of a learning curve where I had to learn more about Windows administration before I could be very good at PowerShell.
Yeah, I'd say if you're just getting started, like honestly, just knowing the basics of Python and Linux and working your way in and out of doing stuff like creating directories and file I/O and stuff like that on Linux is a great place to start. Depending on what area of cybersecurity you want to get into, having a general knowledge of how Windows systems work, whether it's like Windows servers or personal desktops or stuff like that, knowing how the file system works, knowing how the Windows registry works and stuff like that, as well as using PowerShell to be able to automate doing tests and scans and stuff like that, is very useful.
Oh yeah, and Jillian was also asking for good book recommendations. Someone said Black Hat Python. Yeah, sure, that's good. There's a lot of good stuff by No Starch Press as well.
Oh yeah.
But honestly, like making your own Python project is so much fun. Being able to plug into APIs and do stuff with in data that's out there on the internet. For me, like I just got really interested in learning about data APIs and what else was out there and how I could process them. So even as I was just learning about Python, I was still able to build programs that would plug into larger data sets and do something cool. So that's something that worked for me to teach me a bit about Python.
We probably have different answers on this. Someone asks, what do you use more on a daily basis? Python, C++, Java, or any others?
Python.
Nice. Personally, I've been doing a lot of C development just for the Nugget, and also some dumb like web app stuff that we've been doing. So.
Yeah, so me and Alex's roles are slightly different within our little Nugget team. Like I'm in charge of proof of concept, so I'll be like, hey, could we do this thing with this thing? And Alex will be like, I don't know, I'm busy. And so I'll go and like make a proof of concept that's like really rickety, but it works. It does the thing, and it's it's scary. It shows that it's possible. And then Alex will be like, "This is great. I can take a minute," and then sit down and make it into something much more stable, smaller, lower level, and that people can actually use without crashing. Like it's kind of the difference between the CircuitPython rubber nugget that I made and then the Arduino rubber nugget that Alex made. You can run both on the same hardware, but mine takes like 4 seconds just to start up and crashes sometimes, and only can deploy 4 payloads, whereas Alex's can deploy 36 payloads, starts up instantly, and has a web interface. So just proof of concept, Python, versus fully developed product, Alex. So that's kind of the difference between those two for me.
Craig asks, do you sudo su?
I really like the follow-up, which was just sudo your mom. That was a sick burn, I have to admit.
Yeah, I agree with that guy.
Okay.
Sudo your mom.
All right.
Someone says groovy Alex, and then Alex, hi.
All right, so I'm soon to start a course called Defending from Digital Dark Arts. It's crazy to me how Harry Potter has like permeated into every discipline in the world, but I'm not going to touch on that. Any recommendations on stuff I should look into to be good at the class? Yeah, sure. Learning about the most common types of attacks, like in the real world, will probably prepare you for understanding that people are at the core of most of the problems you're going to learn about. Misconfigurations, people doing the wrong things, people putting in the wrong passwords into the wrong places, and people choosing the wrong passwords to begin with are kind of the punchline to a lot of the different security problems you're probably going to learn about. You know, it's great to have some of these like fully automated like Wi-Fi attacks that require no interaction, but frankly, they're kind of rare. It's much easier to just trick people because people are still firmly in control of most technological systems.
We have a question from Funky Monk, which is actually a callback to a question they asked earlier in the stream that I was really confused about. But they ask, Alex, how did you find that Twitter post about the group that was releasing all those details? I think it was yesterday. I can't find it on your post. Was it removed? It was very dramatic. I don't think I've posted on Twitter in the past like 3 days, so I'm a little bit confused about that. Yeah, so it might be Cody.
This is Cody. That's Alex. If you meant Cody, please resubmit your question. Is the age of war driving over with enhanced Wi-Fi security? No, it's just begun. But for client devices, it has gotten a little trickier. Like if you're doing war driving to do something like the creep detector, as Alex and I worked on together, then just trying to see, for example, if there's a smartphone that's nearby all day, even when you're going to different places, that's gotten a lot harder. But when it comes to like locating different devices, like most routers are never going to change their information. You know, it's going to be the same MAC address and the same network name until someone goes in and changes it. So that shouldn't really be a problem. And because there's so many peripheral devices that don't have an emphasis on security, like I said, like, you know, car stereos, Bluetooth headphones, that sort of thing. All those things will provide a new surface area that can get around some of the issues that increased security on client devices might end up causing. So no, it's not over. It's definitely gotten a little bit harder to do certain types of it, but no, it's definitely not over. And it's still lots of fun because now we're going airborne with attaching it to drones and like doing all sorts of other like interesting things that we haven't done before. So not yet.
Yeah, you can also even use it for other protocols too, across different wireless bands, not just Wi-Fi. So it's definitely still relevant.
We've been designated Calyx and AOD.
What?
All right, thank you.
This is getting confusing. Having an identity crisis here.
All right. So we're coming up on the end. So if you have any other great questions, feel free to drop them in right now. And of course, if we do not get to them, you can always leave them on the channel and we will make sure to get to them next week and answer them live on the stream. We also should be dropping the Wi-Fi Nugget next week. So if you stay tuned, hopefully we have a lot more information about that. The documentation is going to be live. And if you already have a Wi-Fi Nugget, now's the time that you should be updating it because we have added tons of new features just in the last couple days. So yeah, check that out and stay tuned. All right, any other final Also, good to see Zam in the stream. I was feeling a little bit ungrounded without Zam helping to moderate. Good to see that he's there and okay. All right, see any other good questions?
Someone says, I want a Wi-Fi Nugget, no doubt. Damn right you do. Get yourself a Wi-Fi Nugget. No, I think that's all we have for this week.
All right, I got one. Null, that's me, I guess. I got a question for you. All right, shoot. Are there any ways to counter a Deauth besides WPA2, I think you mean WPA3, and then plugging your Wi-Fi? That would certainly do it.
Just disconnect your Wi-Fi.
Unplugging your Wi-Fi will eliminate the attack surface. However, upgrading to WPA3 and then enabling protected management frames. Those are both going to be your go-to if you want to disable the ability for people to attack you with deauthentication frames. I particularly think that protected management frames have been a thing for quite some time now. Most devices do support that. So if you wanted to do the easiest possible way, I would say enable protected management frames. Next step up would be WPA3, but not all devices support this yet, so you would still be vulnerable if any of your client devices aren't able to use this new and better standard. I have yet to do WPA3. It's okay. It's fine. You know, there's still some problems, but it's pretty good.
Someone says, Lamau, guy said unplug your Wi-Fi.
Yeah, it works. It will shut down the problem. You know, this is what most professional businesses do when they realize they've been breached too bad. They just unplug the stuff.
It's also the good old QNAP approach. Your device has malware, unplug it.
Unplug it. It is no longer
just turn it off.
To the internet. And someone else, this is a statement. 2006 10-year-old you thinking you're a hacker connecting to someone else's phone by Bluetooth. That was me airdropping stuff like 2 weeks ago when a month ago when I figured out that was possible and almost starting a fight in a diner. So no, we still discover new things all the time. Why did nobody tell me I could airdrop random pictures to people? I just missed that.
That just caused a whole outrage on an airline the other day. Did you see about that?
No, I didn't.
Oh, some guy just like airdropped people pictures of like crashed airplanes and like flights and stuff. And
what an idiot.
And then they had to like delay the flight. No, they actually canceled it because people were spooked.
Yeah, 'cause
so they're
nobody
trying to
likes
figure
that.
out what idiot did this.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think that is all the questions we have time for today. Thank you very much to everybody who's been live in the chat. We've had like over 100 comments since we started, so it's great to check in with all of you, talk about what we've been up to, and also answer your hacking questions. Again, make sure to leave them in the channel. And also a big shout out to Varonis for letting us do this every week. It's super cool that they let me take time out of my job to come on and answer everyone's questions. So thank you very much to them. All right, we will see you all on Friday, right? Friday?
Yep.
Yeah, we'll see you
That's
all on
when it
Friday
is.
for our news stream, and then we'll see you again on Wednesday. Oh, but make sure to check out the Security Forward channel. That's Security FWD if you want to check our news stream because it's only on that channel. All right, see you all next week. Bye.